What is going on, family? You know what time it is. It's the EOS Phoenix channel. Today is Sunday, February 10th, coming to you on the mountain at the usual spot. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I know you have many different planes and flights you can take, but I thank you for coming along on this journey with me on another crypto talk. So it's been a couple weeks since we've done a video. I've actually been doing more hikes. I've been accumulating crypto assets. I've probably increased my EOS and Bitcoin holdings by probably around 30 to 40% over the past 2 months. So I'm kind of nearing that stage where I had aimed for, actually wanted to double my assets over the next, during this crypto winter. I don't know if I'll actually quite get there, but I mean every opportunity again I'm accumulating. So that's been pretty good. I like it because there isn't that confirmation or validation, I guess you can call it, from the major financial players right now, and I think a lot of people are looking for that. So I think rather than wait for that, what I'm doing is what I did in 2014, 2015, making strategic accumulations in those assets. So that's actually been pretty positive. And yeah, without further ado, I guess let's get into it. So a couple things of interest this week associated with EOS. One of them being the recent announcements from Block One announcing they're intending to share their governance strategy. I anticipate, per their tweet anyway, they mentioned that they're planning to release that next week. So we should learn a little bit more about how they maybe plan to vote, what their overall strategy is in place, and really get a sense for maybe what they'd like to see in this ecosystem. We've heard a lot of things about possibly also them proposing making some changes to the overall structure. And I think once they do that, you might see some of the larger players maybe get excited enough and maybe become more motivated to actually propel and demonstrate their support for this. Because one of the challenges we've had right now with the whole ecosystem is the lack of voting. And so we haven't been able to achieve, the 5% we need to actually implement any of the votes. And so a lot of block producers have argued that, in fact, this voting structure, this referendum, is no more than a signaling system. And while I think that's one way to, you could go about doing things, I don't know if I agree fully with that. I think we got to be pretty careful with that, especially considering the regulatory environments that we're in, and what was stated originally when we started this whole process. So I am kind of still of the opinion, I like to give this still an opportunity. I mean, we've only been officially voting now for probably a little over a month, so that's not a lot of time, and there might be good reason why we haven't seen more support and activity from these larger token holders. So I think with, again, Block One probably outlining their strategy, you may get more engagement with the community to the larger holders, I would say, because you have had interest from the community, but you haven't had that with the larger holders. So that's going to be something exciting that we'll have to see here. So again, that should happen next week for those that want to stay in tune with that. You can tune into this channel. I also recommend Everything EOS. That's the Zach Gall team, and also Rob Fitch. So they do a great job covering pretty much everything within the EOS ecosystem, and they throw a show out every week. I'd also recommend you tune into the Gang community. So shout out to Crypto Fees over there and the Crypto Type, as well as EOS Apologists. So there's some great content around. If you guys are looking for content, definitely tune into this channel. I will be always making, different kinds of videos on things I see in my opinions. It's kind of off the cuff though. As you can see, it's not rehearsed. We're outside here. I do weekly hikes here in the Phoenix area. So if you're around, definitely give me a shout out, and you can feel free to join me. Other than the Block One governance documents coming out next week, We also had the liquid Dapps discussion this week, which was incredible. It is still mind-bending in a sense that I personally am still trying to trying to understand it. So for those that don't know about that, essentially, I think most of you who have at least tuned into this channel understand the token resource structure on how EOS works. And so those that know that are aware of the challenges we've had with the resources like RAM, among other things. And so what Liquid Dapps is trying to do is essentially what they're trying to do in the layman's terms is make like a second layer whereby Dapps can use this virtual RAM, or what they're calling VRAM. And so instead of using the RAM resources on the EOS chain, like the RAM, almost like in a computer, when you run an application, you have the RAM that is stored, or I'm sorry, that is used when you're running the app. Now it's possible, in theory, for you to, only use that RAM when you're actually using that instance of the application, and then storing the state of a user's data, for example, on this virtual RAM space is, I think, the way it works. And so how they're going to structure this is they're going to do an ICO over the course of a year. But the interesting thing is, I think, they're going to have, but from the time the ICO starts, they're actually going to have the product already out. So it's kind of an interesting model. We'll have to see how it plays out. That's one aspect to it that it is solving in terms of that scalability dynamics with both RAM and, I believe, CPU is another one they're after. So vCPU, if you read the white paper. And so we may see a shift in token holders. The typical token holder that may hold an EOS token, it may go from something like a regular holder to more of a DApp provider slash DApp creator, I would say. So it'll become more DApp centric in terms of the holdings, and the users who are using apps on EOS may not even know they're in fact using the blockchain in general. So very interesting. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I'll have to see, and I'll have to learn a little bit more about how exactly all that's going to work. I do recommend you check out the Crypto Fees channel or EOS Phoenix. I do post a lot of links in there about this stuff that you can find if you're interested. There was a whole segment done. There was a whole talk done, in fact, about Liquid Dapps, and it's actually going to be a token. Brock Pierce, actually, who's notable in the space, very influential, had mentioned this a few weeks ago, and I mentioned it in my channel. I shared it with the Cypherglass folks, and I think they mentioned it as well. So that's something I would encourage you guys to take a look at, and hear what he had to say about it. A lot of people are claiming this is going to basically address a lot of those issues, and you could indeed see something like a Netscape / Yahoo moment, which would be huge for the blockchain space. So really excited about that, guys. As I learn more, I'll definitely share it on this channel. What else do we have going on? We had the rebrand of Scatter. That actually occurred today. And that's something that, I don't think a lot of people have picked up on, but I did read the article from Rami James and Nathan James. So shout out to those guys doing their thing. But what they're looking at doing besides a huge rebrand in terms of the logo and just the feel of the application, or I guess you could call it the platform, the identity platform for applications and users, is they're also, it seems, adding more of like a ratings or reputation system for applications. So today we have a lot of problems or a lot of challenges with, users losing their funds because of hacks and scams. And I think maybe with this rating system they have, it'll become a little bit more difficult for those folks to steal people's funds because they may not have the good ratings. People can rate them down, and then others will know about it. So I think it's just incredible in terms of improving the security and safety for a lot of users. I'm hoping, I'm kind of learning, I would like to learn a little bit more about how that's structured in terms of how the app is, the default settings for the filters, maybe there's something that, you could go in and have as a default a minimum number of ratings until it basically, in shows that maybe Scatter's okay with it. It's definitely not a catch-all, but it's definitely an improvement over what we have today, because there's a lot of new users that are coming on the space. And I always go back to, an instance like my mom or my family. If I gave them a wallet to use for using one of these Dapps, one of the things I'd want to make sure is that they're not at risk of losing their funds. And right now there's a huge risk for that stuff, because there's no way that, new users know what is legit and maybe what's not. They're at the mercy of potentially some bad guy, right, or gal, stealing their funds, and there's no recourse really for it. So I don't know. I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about that. The other thing we did talk about, or I did mention to them that I was curious about, is whether they could use patterns in terms of money flows. So if you start to see patterns in terms of money flows from a DApp account leaking funds back to an exchange, that may be a sign of some suspicious activity. And so Scatter could almost act not as a police person, but it could start to detect potential issues on the network. And that's another way that they could help safeguard people's funds. We do it with the technology, and we do it with auditing and leveraging, the inherent features of blockchain, which is we know how the money flows, we know how tokens flow, so we can determine if there's abnormal system conditions, and we can flag that to users. So kudos to you guys at Scatter. I'll keep shouting you guys out here, and I encourage everybody else to do the same. What else we have going on? We have obviously still some hype for the EOS wallet. I think that excitement is waning a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you guys. After thinking about it a little bit more, and also reading Dan Larimer's recent post, I'd encourage you guys to take a look at that on Medium. And thinking about it a little bit more, having a wallet on an iPhone doesn't to me sound that great. I'm actually leaning more towards having something that isn't associated with an iPhone, or maybe an Android phone, something that's more like a credit card, or maybe it plugs in or it's decoupled from the phone itself. It's sort of its own system, and maybe you have many different competing companies offering those services. I'd rather see something like that versus something on the iPhone. One, we're having to deal with Apple in general, which we're not sure, their whims and their agreements with government, and whether they're going to play along with things for the long term. You're kind of depending on that system. Again, I'd rather see something where that is kind of away from any phone. It's kind of phone agnostic. So that would be really interesting to see. Maybe something with fingerprinting and other things that plugs into the phone, but doesn't necessarily it's not on the App Store per se. I think that's maybe a better solution. Not sure how it could be done, maybe through the USB, but you could make it such that you can plug into either an Apple phone, or maybe an Android, or maybe you just, maybe there's a different way of doing it. But I don't think having it on the phone as an app actually is the best way, personally. And then having the ability to retrieve funds and accounts is going to be huge. So how that's all done is, I'm kind of curious how that's going to be. I actually see something like the Sense platform maybe playing a role there. If you have a friend of a friend or a family of a family, and you have enough people that maybe get together along with some other things, maybe a passphrase from the actual user, then it's maybe possible to at least recover the account. I'd like to see those kinds of things deployed. Will we see that? I'm not really sure. Maybe features like Chestnut as well, where again you're looking at abnormal activity. You have limits on your savings accounts. Those are the kinds of things I'm excited about seeing. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to, say about that. We also heard news of a funny game here called Floppy Bird that's making its rebirth on the EOS platform. So this was a application that was very popular on the iOS system back in 2014. It's actually the most popular application of that year, and now we're hearing news that it'll be available on the EOS platform in the form of a game, which you guys will be able to play at least once for free. And then I guess the top user over a certain period gets free EOS, which is pretty cool. So we're gonna have to see how all these things go. I think we're kind of nearing that Netscape moment. I know Brock Pierce thinks we've already got there. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're pretty close with all these developments going on. And the amazing thing to me is that almost no large financial institutions are recognizing the value being built on EOS. And I think part of it is just the complexity and the technology, and the I guess critique on the fact or perception of centralization. So I think the community could do a better job of explaining how the tech works and reiterating the nature and how it is actually decentralized, or more decentralized than most of the technologies we have today, including Bitcoin and Ethereum. That said, I'm still a huge holder of Bitcoin. In fact, just like I told you guys, along with EOS, I've kind of increased my holdings here in the crypto winter by about 30 to 40%. So kind of like crypto, there's another gentleman like that, Crypto Tim, I believe, or there may be another guy I'm thinking of that we're kind of accumulating during this period. So that's what's going on here in Phoenix. I hope you guys are doing well. If you like this video, hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. And just want to say a shout out to Cypher Glass and EOS Aloha and everybody else in the EOS sphere. Really thank you guys for tuning in. I know you could check in with other folks, but yeah, you arrived this far, and if you've made it this far through the video, you're definitely what I call an EOS Marine. So stay positive, guys, and until next time, peace.